Happy Monday and welcome to Reading the Bible is Easy-ish. I am Hogan Brock. He is Harrison Litzel. Harrison, today, as we're recording, we just want to acknowledge that there was a really horrible shooting in Texas, and we were talking before we came on. We don't have any wise words to say about that, other than it's really hard. So we want to acknowledge that, and just say that as we're recording, we know that there's a lot of hard stuff that may have happened in the interim between recording and when this is released. So if you're listening, do whatever you need to do, take care of yourself, and I don't know, vote or advocate in whatever way that you kind of feel inspired. But Harrison, otherwise, it sounds like you're sick to me.
I am sick. My daughter, the toddler, she brought home a fever as the school year closed out for her, and that lasted 18 hours for her. And then we thought we were past it, and then my wife and I both started to say my throat, it kind of tickles a little bit. There might be something going on. And so now we're both just got a cold. We both COVID tested and negative and all that fun stuff that's involved with the sniffles these days. But yeah, just I sound worse than I am. I will say I had to record some other stuff today and listen to my own voice, which usually is not fun. But my voice sounds so different right now that I didn't recognize it. So it's made that editing process a lot easier for me. So grateful for that. But how are things up there in Canada?
Yeah, things are fine. It's finally warming up. I feel like I've said that for 3 weeks, but it is warming up. Life is busy, but life is good. I'm learning a lot in this. Working in a hospital right now, so learning a lot doing that. But it's been really good. Yeah, your voice has a resonance to it that it doesn't normally have, so that's a fun thing. Maybe
Yeah,
that'll.
there are certain songs that I only sing when my voice is like this. I start breaking out the Johnny Cash a little bit more so I can
Yeah,
sing along,
yeah.
take advantage of it. Yeah,
Get down there a little more.
yeah.
That's great. Our scripture for this week comes from Genesis chapter 11, starting in verse 1 and going to verse 9. And this is the story of the Tower of Babel. This is a story that I think a lot of people, especially if you've been around church, maybe if you haven't, that it's kind of familiar. It's made its way into popular culture in some ways. So we'll read that, Genesis 11, 1 through 9, and then talk about it a bit. Maybe there'll be something new that comes from that. So again, Genesis 11, starting in verse 1. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as they migrated from the east, they came upon a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower with its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, otherwise we shall be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which mortals had built. And the Lord said, "Look, they are one people, and they all have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing that they propose to do now will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them from abroad, and from there all over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. So we will spend a few minutes here looking at this text. Harrison, I've heard this story I don't know how many times, and it's never made a ton of sense to me. Does it make any sense to you?
So something I noticed this time that I haven't really noticed before is I feel like when I've heard this story before, it's a story of sin and of consequences, that the people did something wrong and God scattered them as kind of their punishment for that. But I don't really see that here in the story. I don't see that they did something wrong so much as that God, the Lord, is concerned about their capabilities. I'm not really sure. I didn't really follow the cause and effect as much this time because I kind of lost that train of this is a sin and so sin must be punished, and instead just saw God uncomfortable with what they were accomplishing, and that left me a little bit more confused.
Yeah, so it reminded me a little bit. We talked about last week the girl who was possessed with a demon, or not a demon, with a spirit from
The
God, right?
spirit,
That's what I
yeah.
was said, a spirit, and was following Paul around and saying, basically, like, this guy's from God and doing
Yeah.
things. And then Paul cast that out, and people are upset. And I'd always read that one as being very confusing. Why did Paul get rid of this demon? We talked about last week, it was to end the exploitation of this girl. And I think, like you, yeah, I've always read this as, or it's always kind of been explained to me as, um, the Lord was concerned that mortals were going to, I don't know, become so powerful that
Hmm.
God couldn't reckon with them. But I don't read that here at all. Um, it feels like instead to me, essentially like a creation story or an origin story. Like, let's explain how language came into the world.
Yeah.
Is the most basic reading I kind of have here.
Yeah. So I think that's probably, I like that reading better. It feels a little bit less like we're putting things onto the story, putting our own kind of frameworks onto it. The other thing that I really noticed here is how many plural pronouns there are for the divine here,
Mm,
right? We have the Lord, and the Lord says, let us go down and confuse their language. And that's interesting because I think, again, in previous times when I've read this, I think that I would have read that as kind of a pointing to the Trinity, but I think that that's not a fair reading of this and not an accurate reading. That's an anachronistic way of reading this, of putting something that an understanding we have later back onto the text, and it's not historically accurate. So this kind of plural understanding of God is something that I think we see here a little bit in Genesis 11, which is kind of changes at different points in the Hebrew scriptures, even just in those passages.
yeah, yeah. It's reminiscent of, and again, is it being this kind of explanation of what's happening, maybe with how people got different places and different languages, those sorts of things. It feels a lot like Genesis creation stories, like 1 and 2, when God is often plural, like let us make
Mm.
man or humanity in our own image. And I don't know if this is coming from a similar source, being proximate to Genesis 1 and 2. Um, I'd have to look at that, but it's reminiscent of that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't. I think that this is a story that is often included in children's Bibles, right? It's got some good pictures that can go along with it. Pretty physical description of what's happening here, a tower being built. The retribution that comes from God doesn't involve death at all, which I think makes it a story that can be included a little bit more easily in children's Bibles. But that just makes me think that I heard this story a lot. I feel like as a child, but it hasn't really been a part of my adult faith in the same
Yeah.
way. And I think it's because it's a story, and it's an interesting story. And like you said, it kind of explains the origin of languages and things like that. But it's not a story that we really use anymore for those explanations. And I don't know if we've. I'm sure there are many people who have found other ways to interpret it and to gain information and gain, knowledge of God from it. But I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, I was just looking. I'm not familiar with what's around this passage at
Mm,
all. So I was wondering if that maybe would give us some context. Immediately after this, we get a genealogy, basically, and immediately before this, we have a genealogy of Noah.
oh,
And it's just like this thing stuck in the middle there.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, it feels out of place in the text, and so I'm kind of curious about that. I'm not sure that I would ever. This is in the lectionary, right? So like maybe there's a sermon to be preached here, but I'm not
Mm.
sure what it is, or what there is to kind of pull away from this in terms of a devotional text or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know either. I feel like usually when we talk about these texts, it's either something like, oh, here's something, I know here in a second you're gonna ask me what I want to spend more time with. And I've got no idea because it's not even something that I feel like I need to, deconstruct or anything like that. It's just like yeah, I understand this story differently than I used to. And now I'm kind of good. I
Yeah.
kind of unpacked it a little bit, and now it's just going to be here as this story that stands in this part of the Bible, and was an explanation of languages. And all right, there we go.
Yeah, yeah, same. There's not a whole lot for me to look into here, other than thinking about. I now live in quite a big city, right? Toronto's a
Mm,
huge city, and there's these massive buildings.
mm,
And as a kid, I always imagined like, oh my goodness, like these people are going to build
mm.
a brick building to heaven,
Yeah,
and how ridiculous that is, right?
yeah.
Like, structurally, that doesn't work. And then also just this idea that, yeah, I am curious. I guess where does that idea of God like having retribution on people? Where does that come from?
Mm,
Why was that a story that I was told?
yeah.
And yeah, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's something to do with I don't know, it's a story of pride. I don't know. I'm guessing. I really
Yeah,
have no idea.
I feel like you were just about to have some great speculative insight there, and you pulled back from the last second at saying something with confidence, but something with pride, I feel like is a good answer for this story as well.
Yeah, yeah. I'm quite good at throwing out bull crap and sticking being very courageous about it. So I'll try not to do that. So I want to ask you what you want to do with it this week, because I
All
think
right.
we both decided we're just gonna let this one go. Um, if you've stuck with us this long, I would invite you to like and subscribe wherever you found us. If you found this helpful at all, or if you have ideas about what this story is supposed to mean beyond just being an explanation of where language in different countries and peoples come from, let us know. I'd really love to hear. Uh, and we will be back next week. And until then, keep trying to read the Bible.